Welcome all. So this is the Transit Sun in Gateway 44 video. And today is November 2nd. So I'm doing this a little late. And we're in Scorpio season, almost into the second decant or decadent. And we're moving into the sun is moving into the energy of gate 44. And gate 44 is coming to meet in the I Ching. And in my cartoon I Ching, which I thought it was going to be fun to pull out and look at, it says Contact is the name. And the subtitle is Beware of Temptation. And so this tells me right away that this particular hexagram is about the magnetism or the electromagnetism of our magnetic monopole. That's like a on the chest, according to human design um, scientism, that there's something that pulls us to certain people in our lives. And the term they use is fractals, that there's fractal chains that we're connected to that work through us, kind of like our genetics on the DNA level. Like there's things working through us. Our mind's not in charge, doesn't make any decisions. Um, but there is an essence of us that seems to make these decisions. And human design presents it as the body's intelligence. And it gives us each our own personal authority of what that intelligence is. And there's 12 different types of authorities. And if you've had a human design reading by me or someone else, you'll have known or have gotten hit of what that intelligence in your body, that particular intelligence, how that's the authority in your body. And you'll have already known this. It's not like any of us don't really already know this, but it's confirmation. And it's also puts it in language and puts it in your face. So you have to see it and deal with it and acknowledge it because it's never really the mind. We're not living our lives to assuage the fear of the mind, but to assuage rather the fear of the body. Because the body feels fear, the body feels emotions, and it's how the body feels. It's the sensations that we are to tune into because it's the body that's in this reality. The mind or the essence is, according to the Gnostic texts and even the Necronomicon, like there's a lot of talk about the spirit being outside the circles of space and time because it's an ineffable essence that exists outside of a third density kind of boxed reality that we seem to be in. So these are all interesting ideas, and I'm going and realities as well. And I'm going a little too far. Let me pull it back. The Gateway 45 is a perceptual frame where we meet others, where we come into contact with otherness. And it's gate 44 in the body graph, so you can see here, it's right here on the spleen, the Scorpio gate. And it's the only gate that connects, creating a channel to the 26, to the ego center. So it's spontaneous intuition, expression of the ego coming forth. And it's the channel of transmission when you include both these particular gates. And so the 44 is about meeting the other. And in Ra's Rave I Ching, he uses the I Ching term that I went over, coming to meet. And he says that in our shift to the possibilities of meeting others, there's a movement between potential and possibility. It uses language of the mind to describe it. I call it conceptualizing. But he goes on to talk about how this is not necessarily a mental process, though that word describes a mental process. And he says there's a jump here that takes place, a jump like neurons firing in the brain. And so he says that we know that we deal with a wave environment at the emotional level and a frequency environment at the awareness level. We know that there is a movement in the frequency from the potential to the possibility. And so this particular gate is connected to the cross of the four ways. And that's going to be the 44, the 24, the 19, and the 33. And as I was saying earlier, this is a relationship between the spleen and the heart center, which is also the ego center. And this is about the archetype, or rather the role of this particular gate, the 44, is the personal manager. And it's about having a great nose. It's about, as Ross says, being able to smell out anything. And it's a gate of alertness, coming to meet. The possibility is the transformation stored or not as a memory. So it's whereas he makes a contrast with the 32, which is like the financial officer, the 32 and the 54 being a channel of ambition. He talks about the 44 as the gate that stores possibilities and stores it as a memory and stores what it is and how to work with it. And so the 26, the other side, the channel of transmission, is like the agent. It will carry out what's in the 44. It'll carry out what's in that memory. Because the 44 can't do it by itself, as a spleen is not a motor. But the ego and the willpower of the 26 can carry it out into the world. And so, as it is with the particular gates in human design, you need both sides for it to come into manifestation. And the throat center is the center of manifestation. And you could see we already have active this week the 3420 from last week. And that's a manifesting generator channel being in the present, in the now. It's a very busy channel, so we're all pretty busy working on things, but feeling also a little lazy with the grand trine going on in the water signs between Jupiter, Mars, Mercury, and the South Node in Pisces, as well as Saturn and Neptune retrograding in the Pisces. Now, this energy here being busy is going to be sparked by those who have the 26. And then that'll activate both the spleen and the ego, our feel good in the spleen, and our ego, our willpower in the ego center. Now, this particular gate is about our relationship with our fractals, with other lines of humans. But on its most base level, it's about interference. It's about karmic relationships with others. And the interference is from the shadow nature of not acting fully authentic and present. And so these are patterns that we deal with socially with others. And these are patterns that just repeat and repeat and repeat. And so primacy is in these fractal patterns. In other words, I'll put it another way. Think of these core fractal groups as basically us. And we're experiencing these connections of people that are on our fractal. In other words, that are on our chain of karmic recognition. And that's why we come together with groups of people in our human relationships who always seem to mimic or replay circumstances of the past. And so there's something that goes on where we're continually with the magnetic monopole, we're attracting the same people into our lives over and over again. And we all know this. And it is only with our frequency working through those energies in a way where the energy can clear. Because really, our attraction to people has to do with tension, fractal tension that needs to be cleared up, karma that needs to be cleared up. And by clearing it up in a way where we're present through it and not giving in to the behavior, behaviors, unconscious behaviors of trauma bonds or just sleeping at the wheel in our relationships. But the more awareness we bring to our relationships, the more present we can be to move in the magic of what it is, what beingness is, and being so present that we're following our authority and moving through it with a pace that recognizes what truth is for every given situation. In other words, whether a connection is correct or not, whether plans are correct or not, whether you want to do this or you want to do that. That's all decisions made at the body level, not the mind. Unless you have mental authority as a mental projector. But other than that, oh, and a reflector as well. Other than most of the authorities are relegated to following the intelligence of the body and its movements. And that intelligence is something that moves quickly or slowly or in vectors or it's something we can feel as the intelligence moves throughout our body like a pinball machine, hitting each and every center. And the centers that are defined, that's who we are. And so the transit this week is manifesting generator. So everyone has access to this energy. The projectors and the reflectors and the manifestors will have extra energy this week. And what it is in this particular gate is a focus on the energy of your relationships and recognizing that the people you meet in your life that you sustain connection with for whatever period of time, that on some level they're on a fractal pattern with you, with your destiny. And so it doesn't, and this is why like also the concept of, oh, I want to change my life, I'm gonna move here, I'm gonna move there, I'm gonna start my life again, I'm gonna reset it. Because your frequency is what it is, you'll go to a new place and that same frequency will light up in the new area where you're at. And it will attract similar frequencies, similar people that have those similar fractal lines. And they will be pulled into your web. And then you'll have your experiences that will seem different initially, but later, the bird's pretty loud, later will be very similar to experiences of the past. And so that's very interesting because it shows that on an unseen level, there's things that operate through us. And these things that operate through us is our evolutionary process according to human design. It is our frequency, it is our fractal lines, which are being replicated wherever we go. And the lesson's pretty simple. It's to master the lessons from each relationship in our life and over time come to master those lessons. Because we're afforded these experiences where we can learn to be as present as possible with them. And there is a time where there are intervals rather where mastery leads to the attraction of higher frequency expressions of fractal lines. And of course, it happens when we operate with a greater awareness, a greater transcendental awareness. And we recognize this when we recognize a certain level of devotion in our life. In low frequencies, humans tend to perceive relationships as exhausting or depleting, or, there's resentment and annoyance. And it's usually because we haven't learned to navigate and respect our own needs and personal boundaries, and to communicate those needs and personal boundaries. Once that's achieved, our perception on other humans begins to change. And that change calls forth an appreciation towards others, where we recognize that those that are in our life, being with them or around them, is sometimes enough. And sometimes you can see that. You can see how special the moment is when you have time with others. And to recognize that and give them that appreciation and give that appreciation for yourself is lights up the life, and it lights up our experiences with others so that we can see what they are. And then we lose preoccupation with our needs and wants and desires, but in a positive way, because we are our needs, wants, and desires. Those are already in our field, our frequency. It's nothing that we have to consciously seek. It's going to preoccupy us anyway. We can't help the mind and or the body's intelligence moving in the direction of what's correct for us. And so the second part of that is being in right environments, being around your fractal groups, the right people. And just that recognition alone is powerful. And then in that is the recognition of the decisions that we make and how those create new trajectories or continue the old trajectories and give us direction along the web that we're in, the web of connections that we have in this life. And it's usually more than the mind can contain. As I like to say, the mind cannot really contain the day. But we only say that because we pretend it can. We only conceptualize such a misnomer because we think it should. Our life should be guided by the light of our intelligence as it moves through illusions and comes to levels and frequencies and experiences of authenticity. And it's not to say that we're not always dealing with the opposite. Our visions are created because of the penetration through all the delusion. Our awareness is created through all the mistakes we have gone through. Just like our successes are found at the bottom of a pile of immense failure. And this kind of thinking, it just pulls me deeper into really bringing home the idea, because there's so much, it seems the biggest tension that seems to occur is choice. And so we always have one side of the fence saying, you're subject to this. This is reality. This is what it is. This is life. This is how it is. You have no real choice. And the other side is you have choice. You always have a choice. You manifest your reality. You create everything. And the paradox here of Uranus playing in gate 20 in the moment, the paradox here is to contain both possibilities. Allowing for that you have created everything, that you are the God in your reality, means taking responsibility for your reality. And that's very powerful. And that transcends certain concepts. Usually people have these concepts of, oh, I'm just responsible for me. That's all I can be responsible for. But there's other perspectives. There's trainings I've been in where on relationships where they teach you that you take responsibility for everything that happens in that relationship. And that's really powerful because that means that you're not ever outside of relationship with others. And that's true in essence. You think of another, another thinks of you. There's no, the separation is illusory. We're always connected to who we're connected to, always. And the paradox is, of course, we can retain our boundaries and still connect with the heart to others. There's some background neighbor talk. Hopefully that's not too loud. And so I'm going to close the door real quick. And so gate 44 is essentially about this. It's about how we relate to our groups, to our fractal alliances, and how we make the same mistakes over and over again, or how we make one mistake, one disastrous relationship in our life, and we never recover from it. We never see another person differently. And even our instinct can be in low frequency and misrecognize and misfire awareness in such situations. And it also addresses the psychological awareness or practice that, everyone that we see is not our mother or father, that everyone is anew and another chance and another opportunity to connect with our authentic self and to connect with another person's authentic self. Just turning the page of my notes. And so again, the 44 is, and this week, what we're experiencing is our relationships with others and how we come forth to them or they come forth to us and what energy is present. And the way these fractals work, they work on every level. There are relationships, there are families, there are local communities, or local workplaces. And these are all, as Ra called them, tribal genetic pools. And coming back to that paradox of we create our reality versus reality is fate. Everything is fated. It's all fated. Astrology describes everything, all the planets. They impel us forth. And the asteroids specifically name our realities and what we experience. It feels such a contradiction or a paradox. Because in human design, over and over again, what do we hear? We hear we do not make free choices. It is it is a program that operates through us and it works through us like something seemingly chaotic, but that has an intelligence that assesses and eliminates interference patterns through components which are us. We are the individuals, the basic components of it. And it keeps us moving towards healthy relationships with each other or the possibility of such. Because on a higher frequency, this particular gate expresses itself as teamwork, as working with others in harmony. And it's about, as I said before, it's the spleen. So it's your sense of smell, it's the sensation of smell and the ability to read others. So in this gate 44, coming to meet or meeting others and reading them. And this is something our body, the intelligence of the body's immune system, right? This we're talking about the spleen center here. The system that can pick up pheromones or subtle hormonal signals or any subtle energies in the environment. And it picks up the scent of who your allies are and who your allies are not. And it's in this that we find the teamwork, the team that we work with for our life, or the team at the moment that we work with. And so it's a great week to observe the teams that gather around you, the teams that you attract around your reality, these fractal kind of genetic pools that help you meet your experience and raise it and raise the experience and frequency of it and add the magic to your life. Because many of us with varied environments and gates work better alone or with others. And you could also look at your human design business chart. If anyone's interested in that, I do the business chart reading and give you a chart of it. That's a fairly uh, not a very expensive reading, but I haven't put it on my site yet. I need to do that, and it's just a chart that shows how you operate, like whether you operate well with others or in groups or as a leader or in small groups or big groups. And these are all different fractal patterns or units. And this is the dance. This is what we experience in this life. And this information is, again, it works through us. It's stored in our ancestral memory and stored in our blood, and supposedly it transfers through the DNA down into fractal lines. And so it's a lineage of sorts. It's like a spiritual lineage, but in human design, we call it the fractal lineage. So essentially, what we're looking at here is who belongs in your life and who does not. But really, it's just who belongs in your life because you're looking at who are you connecting with? Are you connecting? No. You move on. Are you connecting? No. Try again or move on. Try again or move on. Like our energies are always moving. We're either connecting or we're not. And we want to connect because that's the magic of life. That's what creates. That's how we create. That's how we recreate ourselves and penetrate through illusion and through lies into the truth of who we are. And so this gets deep into like ideas about the source code in human design, trinary pattern, I don't know if I can say trinary patterns. And this gets deep into the whole idea of how we work as humans in larger and larger groups. And the idea that there are ancestral genetic chains. Now, Richard Rudd mentioned that there was 144,000 core fractals. Interesting number, huh? Me and Tula were supposed to do a video Friday. We weren't able to do it. We were going to connect on this 144,000 concept from the Gnostic writings. And it's very interesting. We'll remember to do it next, no, next of our next collab. But in human design, it notes 144,000 core fractals. So it's that's very precise. Of course, it's not saying how many spirits or souls or human fractals exist in each core group. But very interesting ideas. And so that's what it is for this week. Um, Keep in mind that it's a manifesting generator graph for this week. So if you need to get things done, it's a good time to get things done. Um, as we start to approach November, which is a retrograde month. I think Mercury goes into retrograde around November 11th, and that builds up towards the new moon on the 19th, 20th, 21st, 23rd. And those days are going to be really interesting. I'll talk about that in a separate video. And then there'll be some calm after that, and then we'll move into December as Mercury goes direct and but we're right now moving into a time where a lot of the planets are direct, and November will be a little chaotic. And so I'll be going over some more Scorpio gates next week as we move into Scorpio gate 1, 43, and 43's, oh yeah, and 14. And then we'll move into Sag. Hopefully this was interesting and helpful to you guys for this week. A lot of powerful ideas around who we are and how we experience this reality that we're in relative to choice or lack of choice. All right, have a great week. Thanks so much for listening and take care.